students, welcome to the program. The topic selected is stress and categories of stressors. The objectives for the present lecture include to understand the phenomena of stress, to know about the history of stress, to know about the various symptoms of stress, to know about the various types of stress, and to be familiar with the various types of stressors. Dear students, stress is a fact of life. Wherever we are and whatever we are doing, we cannot avoid stress, but we can learn to manage it, so it does not manage us. Stress is a physical response to a feeling, situation, or event that interferes with your sense of well-being. Stress is the way of human beings react both physically and mentally to the changes, events, and situations in their lives. In psychology, stress is a feeling of emotional strain and pressure. Stress is a type of psychological pain. Small amounts of stress may be desired, beneficial, and even healthy. Positive stress helps improve athletic performance. It also plays a factor in motivation, adaptation, and reaction to the environment. Excessive amount of stress, however, may lead to bodily harm. Stress can increase the risk of strokes, heart attacks, ulcers, and mental illnesses such as depression and also aggravation of a pre-existing condition. People experience stress in different ways and for different reasons. The reaction is based on our perception of an event or situation. If we view a situation negatively, we will likely feel distressed, overwhelmed, oppressed, or out of control. Distress is a more familiar form of the stress. The other forms, eustress, results from a positive view of an event or situation, which is why it's also called good stress. The term eustress comes from the Greek root eu, which means good. Eustress results when a person perceives a stressor as positive. Distress stems from the Latin root dis, which means medically defined distress is a threat to the quality of life. It occurs when a demand vastly exceeds a person's capabilities. Eustress helps us rise to a challenge and can be an antidote to boredom because it engages focused energy. That energy can easily turn to distress. However, if something causes us to view the situation as unmanageable or out of control, many people regard public speaking or airplane flights as very stressful, causing physical reactions such as an increased heart rate and a loss of appetite, while others look forward to the event. It's often a question of perception. Perception of stress is based on individual's response. We become stressed whenever a situation or an event demands more than we believe we are able to give. Now let's have a look over the history of stress. The first person to study stress scientifically was a physiologist named Hans Selye. The term stress was first used by Hans Selye in 1930s to identify physiological response in laboratory animals. He later broadened and popularized the concept to include the perceptions and responses of humans, trying to adapt to the challenges of everyday life. In Selye's terminology, stress refers to the reaction of the organism and stressor to the perceived threat. Stress in certain circumstances may be experienced positively. The term is commonly used by lay persons in a metaphorical rather than literal or biological sense, as a catch-all for any perceived difficulties in life. It also becomes a euphemism, a way of referring to problems and eliciting sympathy without being explicitly confessional, just stressed out. It covers a huge range of phenomena, from a mild irritation to the kind of severe problems that might result in a real breakdown of health. In popular usage, almost any event or situation between these extremes could be described as stressful. Now, dear students, let's have a look towards the symptoms of stress. Symptoms of stress fall into three general but interrelated categories: physical, behavioral, cognitive, emotional. Some of the physical symptoms of stress include headaches, fatigue, gastrointestinal problems, hypertension or high blood pressure, heart problems such as palpitations, inability to focus, lack of concentration, sleep disturbances, whether it's sleeping too much or an inability to sleep, sweating palms, shaking hands, anxiety, sexual problems. Even when we don't realize it, stress can cause or contribute to serious physical disorders. It increases hormones such as adrenaline and corticosterone, which affect your metabolism, immune reactions, and other stress responses. That can lead to increase in heart rate, respiration, blood pressure, and physical demands on one's internal organs. Behavioral changes are also expression of stress. They can include irritability, disruptive eating patterns, overeating or undereating, harsh treatment of others, increased smoking or alcohol consumption, isolation, compulsive shopping. A sustained high level of stress can affect every area of your life productivity in the workplace and classrooms, increased health risks and relationships, and so on. Cognitive symptoms of stress include memory problems, indecisiveness, inability to concentrate, trouble thinking clearly, poor judgment, seeing only the negative, anxious or racing thoughts, constant worrying, loss of objectivity, fearful anticipation. Emotional symptoms of stress include moodiness, agitation, restlessness, short temper, irritability, impatience, inability to relax, feeling tense and on edge, feeling overwhelmed, sense of loneliness and isolation, depression or general unhappiness. Now, dear students, we'll learn about measuring psychological stress. Due to the wide impact and the far-reaching consequences of psychological stressors, especially their profound effect on the mental well-being, it's particularly important to devise tools to measure such stressors. Two common psychological stress tests include the Perceived Stress Scale (PSS), devised by American psychologist Sheldon Cohen, and the Social Readjustment Rating Scale (SRRS) or the Holmes-Rahe scale. While the PSS is a traditional Likert scale, the SRRS assigns specific predefined numerical values to stressors. Now, the types of stress. Stress can impact both one's mental as well as physical health. It can also lead to poor decision making and inefficient work. There are at least 3 different types of stress. Routine stress related to the pressure of work, family, and other daily responsibilities. Stress brought about by a sudden negative change, such as losing a job, divorce, or illness. And traumatic stress, which happens when you are in danger or being seriously hurt or killed. Examples include a major accident, war assault, a natural disaster. This type of stress can cause post-traumatic stress disorder. In another attempt, stress can be divided into 4 major types: time stress, anticipatory stress, situational stress, and encounter stress. Each of these has its own nuisance, drawbacks, and even benefits. First, the time stress. Time stress involves the pervasive feeling that there is never enough time in the day. This type of stress tends to occur as deadlines approach. Sometimes one may find that they simply cannot achieve all their goals, and this can lead to the feeling of failure in them. But time stress is one of the easiest types of stress to handle, as it's related to something tangible and immutable. Though we can change our habits, there is nothing we can do about time itself. Because of this, being realistic about our goals is one of the most critical aspects of relieving time stress. Being realistic about what we can and cannot do and in how much of the time is the key to overcome this stress. The second, anticipatory stress. It's the kind of stress one experiences while anticipating any upcoming event or situation. Anticipatory stress is one of the most insidious forms of stress because it can be constant. After all, there is almost always something new around the corner. Anticipatory stress also conveys no true benefits. Worrying about a situation that you can't change doesn't help. Preparing ourselves is the key to overcome this type of stress. The better prepared we are for the upcoming events, the less we will have to worry about. Being confident in our decisions is a must. Though we may not always be able to make the right decision, but we should be able to make the best informed decision. Focusing on tangible actions, like look for the something that we can investigate or improve, this allows us to take control over the situation in a functional way. Next, the situational stress. This type of stress is generally blended with panic, and that can lead to exceptionally poor decision making. Emergency situations often require immediate action, and they can have devastating consequences. For example, the data loss for a company CEO, when he or she will often feel under pressure to quickly make the right decision to steer their business out of danger. Even in an emergency, we need to take the time to think things through, otherwise we could simply compound our problems. Seeking advice from a knowledgeable mentor or experienced person may be able to reframe our perspective and give us some useful tips. Removing ourselves from the situation or from that specific environment that is triggering your stress is the remedy to overcome situational stress. Next is the encounter stress. An individual needs to deal with other people, and not all those dealings are pleasant. From breakfast in the morning till last social contact in office or outside, there can be many social encounters that are less than pleasant. One may feel stress when approaching negotiations, dealing with angry people, or coming up to the expectations of the people. Encounter stress can also simply arise from having to be in constant contact with many individuals, as having to be social on all the time can be exhausting. This can lead to a feeling of brain drain and impact one's ability to work. Remember to make time for yourself. It's important to get some alone time in every day, so you don't always feel as though you are performing your duties as a machine. Develop your emotional intelligence. Learning more about why people feel a certain way and how you can have positive interaction with them can help put you back in control. Don't take it personally. We can't please all the people all the time. Learn to accept the fact that sometimes people will walk away unhappy. The other types of stress include baseline stress. Day-to-day living can be stressful in even the best of times. Dealing with routine issues at home and on the job produce an ongoing but usually manageable level of baseline or underlying stress. Baseline stress may be caused by various sources of tension of the individual, emotional, family, or social levels. It may be increased by changes in the day-to-day environment, being away from family without adequate communication, working with new people from different cultures, uncertainty about work, new information to assimilate, so on. Staff members need to be prepared for this and learn how to develop strategies to cope with it. Basic stress normally decreases after the first few weeks of a new assignment. Then comes the acute stress. Acute stress reactions are our body's reactions to a real or perceived threat to our well-being, be it physical or psychological. Acute stress prepares the body to protect itself and represent a survival function. Next, cumulative stress. When high level of stress are constant or ongoing, they may result in a cumulative or chronic stress response. Cumulative stress can build up often unrecognized over a period of time. This type of stress can easily become uncomfortable and physically and mentally unhealthy when it occurs too often, lasts too long, and is too severe. It's important to note that what is distressful for one person may not be necessarily distressful for another. Your individual perception, that's the degree of threat you feel and the amount of control you have over the circumstances, can affect the degree of distress you personally experience. We know from the stress research that the single most stressful experience most people have is to feel that they can't control their circumstances. Then comes the critical incident stress. A critical incident is defined as an event out of the range of normal experience, one which is sudden and unexpected, makes you lose control, involve the perception of a threat to the life, and can include elements of physical or emotional loss. Such incidents may include natural disasters, multiple casualty accidents, sexual or other types of assaults, death of a child, hostage taking, suicide, a traumatic death in family, duty-related death of a co-worker, and war-related civilian deaths. Now, dear students, let's learn something about stressors. A stressor is a chemical or biological agent, environmental condition, external stimuli, or an event seen as causing stress to an organism. A stressor is anything that causes the release of stress hormone. Stressors can cause physical, chemical, and mental responses internally. Psychologically speaking, a stressor can be event or environment that individual might consider demanding, challenging, and threatening individual safety. Events or objects that may trigger a stress response may include environmental stressors, hypo or hyperthermic temperatures, elevated sound levels, over-illumination, overcrowding, daily stress, for example, traffic, lost keys, money, quality and quantity of physical activities, life changes, for example, divorce, bereavement, workplace stressors, for example, high job demands versus low job control, repeated or sustained exertions, forceful exertions, extreme postures in office, clutters, then chemical stressors, for example, tobacco, alcohol, drugs, social stressors, for example, societal and family demands. There are two broad categories of stressors: physical stressor and psychological stressors. Physiological stressors or physical stressors. These are stressors that put strain on our body. That's very cold or hot temperatures, injury, chronic illness, or pain. Physical stressors produce mechanical stresses on skin, bones, ligaments, tendons, muscles, and nerves that cause tissue deformation and, in extreme cases, tissue failure. Chemical stressors also produce biomechanical responses associated with metabolism and tissue repair. Physical stressors may produce pain and impair work performance. Chronic pain and impairment requiring medical attention may result from extreme physical stressor or if there is not sufficient recovery time between successive exposures. A recent study shows that physical office clutter could be an example of the physical stressors in a workplace setting. Then comes another category, that's the psychological stressors. Stress occurs when an individual is unable to cope with the demands of their environment, such as crippling debts with no clear path to resolve it. Generally, stressors take many forms, such as traumatic events, life demands, sudden medical emergencies, and daily inconveniences, to name a few. Scientists are now proposing that stressors can be further divided into absolute stressor. These stressors are that everyone exposed to them would interpret as being stressful. These are objective stressors that are universal, that is, earthquake, tsunami, or the events of September 11, 2001. Then the relative stressor. These are stressors that only some exposed to them would interpret as being stressful. These are subjective stressors that cause different reaction in different people. That is, time pressure at work, traffic, paying taxes, writing an exam. Stressors can also be classified as internal and external. Internal stressor. Some stressors are internal, that is, stress-inducing thoughts or behaviors. These thoughts come from one's psychological mindset or expectations. Examples of internal stressors include common ones including fear of failure, fear of public speaking, and fear of flying. Few people enjoy not knowing or not being able to control what might happen. Think about how you might react when waiting for the results for a medical test. These might be attitudes, opinions, or expectations. You may not even think about how your beliefs shape your experience, but these preset thoughts often set us up for stress. Consider the expectations you put on yourself to create a perfect holiday celebration or advance up the career ladder. Then the external stressors. Other stressors come from the external factors, which are forces that you cannot easily control. Examples include major life events, discovering your pay has been cut, urgent deadlines, or an upcoming exam. Internal and external stressors can have the same physical and psychological effects. So, dear students, we may conclude that we tend to think of stress as a negative reaction to pressure. Stress is the body's natural reaction in response to a physical or emotional challenge. Stress is a natural and normal response and is not always a negative experience. Positive life events and as well as negative ones can create a stress response to meet the challenges of a new situation. Stress can be positive in activating a person's body, mind, energy. It can be defined as an individual's capacity to mobilize every resource the body has to react promptly and adequately to any given situation. However, if stress lasts too long, the body's resources will be exhausted and the person will develop harmful or negative forms of stress reactions. To best manage the effects of stress, it's helpful to recognize its various forms and stressors that cause it. By learning to cope with stress and by recognizing the symptoms of depression and the warning signs of suicide, one will better prepared to help not only one's own self but also friends, fellow students, etc. Dear students, I hope you enjoyed this lesson. Thanks for watching.